Breaking news, CBS Sports HQ. According to from the NFL, where the Steelers' Diontae Johnson is the latest wide receiver to cash in. According to multiple reports, Johnson will get a 2-year contract extension worth $36 million, including $27 million guaranteed. The fourth-year wide receiver made his first Pro Bowl this past season when he led the Steelers with 107 catches for 1,161 yards and 8 touchdowns. We know that things have changed in Pittsburgh without Ben Roethlisberger there, but you see what Diontae Johnson has done in his career and where he's ranked in the AFC since 2019. Just one of the best pass catchers in terms of volume and maybe some better quality of targets potentially coming his direction in 2022. To break it down here on CBS Sports HQ on Fantasy Football Today, I'm Jamey Eisenberg. That's Dave Richard. That's Heath Cummings. So Diontae Johnson now going to be with Pittsburgh for the next 2 years. The hold-in is over. He joins DK Metcalf, and Deebo Samuel is getting paid since the start of training camp, and certainly a plethora of wide receivers who have gotten paid this offseason. Where does Diontae Johnson rank for you in terms of the Steelers as a pass catcher and then as a fantasy asset this year?
He's the number one receiver in Pittsburgh. He's going to be the guy that gets the most targets in that offense. It doesn't matter that Ben Roethlisberger's gone. I think the coaching staff knows that he's the best playmaker that they have, and they clearly wanted him back to give him about $18 million a year. All the good stuff about George Pickens and Calvin Austin that's been coming out in training camp, not enough to unseat him as the number one guy. As far as fantasy goes, I'm nervous. Mitchell Trubisky has not looked good in camp. Kenny Pickett has not looked good in camp. Mason Rudolph hasn't looked good in the NFL when he's had the chance to play. These are the guys that are going to be throwing in Diontae Johnson's direction. So he may still get decent target volume from game to game, but the quality of target, I think, could go down from where it was with Ben Roethlisberger last year. And it's not like they were tough throws that Roethlisberger was making to Diontae Johnson, but it could be a mess for him. I think it's going to be a downturn statistically for him. He's barely in my top 24 among wide receivers in full PPR. He's way out of it in non-PPR.
Very interesting that Trey Lance looked miserable in training camp, and then Deebo Samuel signed, and all of a sudden Trey Lance looked pretty good. And we saw that Geno Smith and Drew Lock were struggling until DK Metcalf stepped on the field, and now the reports are they're starting to look pretty good. Maybe it's the fact that Mitchell Trubisky was missing this guy, and Chase Claypool was dealing with the shoulder injury to turn things around in Steelers practice, that those guys hopefully get back on the field. But in terms of Diontae Johnson, for you, Heath, where do you think he finishes this season as a fantasy player?
A low-end number 2 wide receiver. I'm slightly more optimistic than Dave. And the thing is, he has been so volume dependent. His yards per target, his yards per catch have not been good at all. He had 169 targets last year. A lot of that is because they threw the ball 653 times. I don't think there will be near as much pass volume. I do think George Pickens adds some significant competition for targets. But I still expect that Johnson's going to be an 8 to 9 target per game guy and finishes a low-end number 2.
I think the one thing with Trubisky you can kind of point to is when he had Allen Robinson in Chicago in the best year for Trubisky and one of the best years for Robinson in the 2019 campaign, 154 targets. Now, clearly there is more competition than what Robinson was dealing with in Chicago then, but still we could see a lot of volume heading in Diontae Johnson's direction. The one thing to keep in mind with Trubisky, whether it's him or Kenny Pickett, is those guys will run a lot more than Ben Roethlisberger did, who did not run at all. So maybe Diontae Johnson's targets come down, but more quality targets. I know you said that could be a problem, Dave, but it's not like Roethlisberger was lighting it up down the field, and maybe we see Diontae Johnson do a few different things in terms of his route tree. So we'll see where fantasy managers come out on Diontae Johnson, but we know that he's going to be playing in the 2022 campaign, not holding out anymore or holding in. He has agreed to a 2-year contract extension and should continue to be a member of the Steelers and a productive fantasy asset as well.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.